right, hello guys, and welcome back to another episode of Clone Command Star Wars Podcast. So this is going to be episode 1 in a series of 4 episodes about the balance
good
of the
soldiers
Force
follow
and
orders.
kind of the conflict within that. So, as usual, whenever we're talking about expanded universe lore stuff, I'm joined by Josh. What is up, Josh? How you been?
I've been good.
Sick. All right, so today you want to kind of give a rundown of what we're going to be talking about?
Yeah, so like we discussed, we're gonna kind of start at the beginning, not the beginning that people know of, Episode 4, New Hope, but the beginning of the Star Wars timeline, about 36,000 years before the movie A New Hope. So yeah, we'll cover the Jedi Order on Tython. Talk briefly about the Force Wars or the Wars of Light and Dark. Give kind of a background on where the Jedi Order came from. Talk briefly about the Rakatans and probably speculate a little bit on how the Jedi might have gotten from Tython to Ossus, where we see them, thousands and thousands of years later after a great silence in the history.
Mm-hmm. And then I did have a few people comment. I released one YouTube short on it, and I had a guy comment, and he was wondering how we are getting this information, what it all came from. So just kind of, I was wondering if you could just kind of give like a brief overview of where we're pulling all this stuff from, because you would know better than me.
All right, so there is a lot of lore in the Legends continuity. Everything from the Tales of the Jedi, or as it was known before, it got bound into Disney's new Legends volume. The Dawn of the Jedi graphic novels. There's a Dawn of the Jedi full-size novel, which takes place also about 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin. I'm also using the Star Wars Jedi vs. Sith Essential Guide to the Force. And then there's a lot of little references if you go to Wikipedia and search any of the terms or events that we talk about today. You should be able to scroll down to the bottom of the articles that come up on Wikipedia and see some of the other sources. There's far too many for me to list off, even if I could remember everything I've read over the last 2+ decades.
Yeah. So I hope that answers anyone's questions when they're asking about our sources. So first off, let's get into the, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Jedi.
Yeah, that's roughly how I pronounced it. It's
Mhm.
basically Jedi, but there's an apostrophe between the E and the D, and it's JE apostrophe DAII.
Oh.
And it's two terms from the Diabendu language,
Mhm.
meaning mystic and center. And
Oh.
obviously that's where the Jedi got their name from, because they borrowed the same Diabendu symbol, a circle with 8 spokes, which I believe in our world is actually a like a prayer wheel from the Tibetan region of
Oh, really?
Mongolia, or, India, Tibet, Mongolia, that region.
That's pretty cool.
Um,
Connection to the
yeah,
real world there.
Yep. And each of the major Force orders that we'll discuss, the Jedi, and the Sith, have their own kind of code that embodies their um, kind of their outlook on the Force. And people are
Mm-hmm.
probably familiar with the Jedi Code or the Sith Code. Um, those are mentioned more often and in material people are more likely to have read. But the Jedi Code is: there is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no fear, there is power. I am the heart of the Force. I am the revealing fire of light. I am the mystery of darkness in balance with chaos and harmony, immortal in the Force.
Oh, so is this more of a? Are we looking at kind of gray Jedi here, or what we would call uh, gray Jedi, kind of in this time period, 4,000 years or whatever after the Jedi? Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely in what most people would consider um, gray Jedi, these kind of are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in a way, they're not, because gray Jedi are generally represented as um, individuals who can't decide to pick a side, and they kind of just want to pick and choose bits and pieces of the Force as
Mm-hmm.
best suits them. Whereas the Jedi believe that both the light and dark are integral to the functioning of the Force, and
Mm-hmm.
if either one gets out of balance, the individual or the the system or even the galaxy itself is also out of balance and makes poor decisions and comes to bad ends, kind of deal.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's more
So
of a they've found balance kind, or is this kind of where it like there was always balance, so we kind of see a split afterwards, or how is this kind of like
yeah,
how did we get
so
where we have now?
36,000 years before Yavin,
Hmm.
these unmanned ships, 8 of them, go out across the galaxy and go to different worlds and basically, I guess, telepathically summon the Force users on those worlds and then carry them back to Tython. And so you've got Wookiees and Zabrak and Miraluka and Nogri and Sith and humans and all these species mixed together on Tython. And Tython itself is a world that's mysteriously attuned to the Force to the point
Hmm.
where if there's too much dark side emotion, like if you have a full blown dark sider actively just using only dark side energy,
Yeah.
it will create a physical storm on that part of the planet.
Wow.
Um, and if you have a light side user who just focuses on the light side and doesn't use anything else, it'll create a force storm around them. And so these early force users had to learn how to work together, overcome their language barriers, and learn how to keep themselves in balance with the light and the dark so that they wouldn't trigger drastic force storms that would destroy their villages and farms and themselves, really.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's interesting. You read through the Tales of the Jedi, Volume 1, and there's an apprentice, and um, she's worried about getting too angry. And her master basically tells her, it is okay to be angry at times. There is a place for righteous anger, basically, is what he tells her.
Hmm.
Um, and and she has to learn how to channel her anger at um, at the right moment and in the right way rather than trying to repress it and let it go, which is very
Yeah.
different from what we see with the Jedi in the kind of the core timeline.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. Um, that's interesting. So it really is almost a perfect balance. Um,
That's what they strive for, yeah.
yeah.
And they see it embodied in the twin moons that orbit Tython. Um, one moon, for whatever reason, is always very bright and light, and the other
Mhm.
one is always very dark and hard to see. And they call it
So
the
weird.
light one Ashla and the dark one Bogan. And it may just be that Bogan is always in like maybe it's tidally locked or something. It's always in the shadow. I don't know.
Mhm.
They don't really go into why it's dark, but they consider those two moons to embody the Force. So they see the Force as the light side Ashla and the dark side Bogan, and it's their goal to, as those two move in balance around Tython, they try to move the Force through and around them in the same kind of balance as the moons have with their um, parent planet.
Oh. Huh. That's
Yeah.
interesting. So
Yeah.
in terms of technology, I know you spoke about like them having ships and stuff. So in terms of technology, where would you say they're at? I know Star Wars is like notoriously bad for showing advancements in technology, but I mean this is 3,000, 4,000 years ago. So surely
36
there's
36,000 years ago.
yeah, that's way more than 3,000. I can do math.
Yes, that's an order of magnitude greater. Um, well, the Jedi Order uses steel swords, not lightsabers.
Oh.
Um, the they don't have hyperdrives at all. Um,
Mhm.
they use projectile weapons. They have, I think, laser weapons, like actual lasers, not like blasters.
Mhm.
Um, and it does feel a very different tech level than um, main main timeline Star Wars, noticeably so.
That's good.
Uh,
Yeah.
however, around 11,000 years after the Thoyor automated ships brought them to Tython, the Rakata, um, an alien species people will be familiar with from the original KOTOR game,
Mhm.
discover Tython, and given it is probably the most force-rich system in the galaxy, they look at it as a feeding ground that they want to control so that they can rejuvenate the Rakatan society.
Yeah.
Because the Rakata power all of their technology with the Force.
Oh,
Uh,
interesting.
yes, and they have hyperdrives, and they have what they call Force sabers and blaster-like weapons.
Mhm.
But it is all powered by the dark side of the Force. And
Interesting.
yeah, and so they will use um, their 'cause basically every Rakatan it has the ability to tap into the Force, and they will
Mhm.
use their power to basically kind of meditate in a dark side fashion until they sense a light side rich or a Force rich planet in the galaxy, and then they'll use the Force to navigate their ship to that planet. So if a planet's
Yeah.
not particularly rich in the Force, has a less diverse biosphere, or whatever it is that makes certain planets very strong in the Force, they can't even see it, let alone navigate to it. But when
Interesting.
they get there, they hunt down every person they can find who has the ability to touch the Force, and the stronger ones are forced to fight and train in death arenas and become elite slave soldiers for the Rakata, and everybody else is basically shoved into kind of like torture cages that drain the force out of them, basically
Mhm.
torturing them, and it tortures them and forcing them to tap into the dark side to protect themselves, and then it siphons off the dark side energy that the person in the cage is drawing on.
Interesting.
And it eventually kills the individuals they put in the cages. So they have to keep replenishing their ships with new victims, basically living batteries, so they can keep their civilization functioning.
Mhm.
And because, like I said, Tython is a very powerful planet in the Force, and it was full of very powerful Force users, it became the biggest prize that the Rakata Infinite Empire could ever hope to take.
Mhm.
And they send a force to try and take the system. One of their force hounds, their elite soldiers, uh, basically goes over to the Jedi side and shows them how to build force sabers. And
Oh.
because the Jedi are not afraid of using the dark side, they can actually channel the dark side through the force saber, giving them what is basically a lightsaber powered by the dark side. And the Jedi use their force sabers, um, and some contact with the ancient alien species of the Qua, which have disappeared from the galaxy at this point,
Mhm.
to defeat and drive off the Rakata,
Interesting.
capturing a bunch of their ships. Some of the
Mhm.
Rakata go into the caves on Tython and start small tribes there. You run into them 20,000 years later if you play the Old Republic MMO
Yeah.
as a Jedi.
Interesting. So this is not the civilized age Obi-Wan was talking about. This was very
No, no.
interesting.
Well, this is right before that, because Obi-Wan says for 1,000 generations the Jedi protected the Republic,
Mhm.
and a generation is generally considered to be 25 years. So 1,000
Oh, so 25.
generations is 25,000 years,
Oh, interesting.
and this is 25,700 years ago. So it's the events that lead to the creation of that great civilized age that the Jedi
Mhm.
protected. Because unfortunately, what happens
Which
is,
not the foreshadow, but sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you, not the foreshadow, but the Sith may have protected it too. We'll get into that in another episode.
yes, yes. Although they weren't protecting the majority of that age, they were only protecting the 1,000 years of the Republic. But yeah, we'll go into that later.
Yes.
Yeah, so unfortunately, and you people may see the flaw of equipping an entire army of Jedi who value balance in the Force with a weapon that requires them to channel only dark side energy.
Yeah.
The Rakata are defeated, but a number of the Jedi spent so much time using the dark side of the Force and tapping into it that they didn't want to go back to balance,
Mhm.
and it started the Force Wars. There's also been referenced as the Wars of Light and Dark
Yeah.
um, on Tython.
Mhm.
Um, it doesn't actually have the Wars of Light and Dark. It's not a very
Oh,
common
really?
phrase anymore. Yeah, it used
Yeah.
to be
Josh is
a
very,
phrase.
very old.
Yes, yes. Um, so now it's generally known as the Force Wars, which was
Mhm.
a series of conflicts that lasted about a decade on Tython,
Yeah.
as the Jedi split into uh, two factions: those who went all in on dark, and the others who basically went all in on the light in response.
Mhm. Okay, so this is where we first see like a great split um, within the Force users on Tython. Is it
Yes.
so? Are they calling themselves Jedi and Sith at this point, or are they? Um,
No. At this point, the Jedi come out of this, but the Sith at this point are not an ideology. They are
Mhm.
a species like Wookiee or Zabrak or human. And
Oh.
according to the Essential Guide to the Force, the Sith civilization basically came, came into existence or formed 100,000 years before Yavin. So about um, 70 to 75,000 years before this period. And there are Sith on Tython who are part of the Jedi Order, and they're just another species.
Yeah.
No, at this point, the two factions are they're not calling themselves Jedi and Sith. They are the followers of Ashla and the followers of Bogan. Um,
Mhm.
Ashla again being the light, and Bogan being the dark.
Interesting. Okay, so then you also mentioned that somehow, I assume we lost some source material for this, but somehow the Jedi or the Jedi. Wait, I don't know if both factions say there's something, but you said something about somehow they get to a different planet. So,
Yes.
awesome.
So the War of Light and Dark lasts for about a decade. And at the
Hmm.
end, remember how I mentioned that Tython is very powerful and very sensitive to the Force?
Yeah, yeah.
So imagine what happens when you have an army of lightsiders fighting an army of darksiders on this planet.
Yeah.
The Force basically destroys, Force storms basically destroy everything on the planet.
Hmm.
Um, and the people who survived um, fled the planet.
Hmm.
Um,
From both factions.
yeah, although and this is where there's a period here um, where things just kind of go dark because this is about 25,000 years before Yavin, right? Um, we know that in 7,000 BBY, before Battle of Yavin, so 7,000 years
Yeah.
before the Battle of Yavin, we had the Hundred Year Darkness or the 100 Year War, which was a war between um, Dark Jedi and the rest of the Jedi Order. Um,
Hmm.
and before that, we don't really have a lot. There's the Legions of Letau, which
Hmm.
are about 1,000 years after um, everybody's forced to flee Tython.
Yeah.
But again, it's a Jedi general who is frustrated with how the Jedi Order is running things, who leaves the Jedi Order, takes a bunch of followers, and basically tries to create an offshoot of the Jedi.
Hmm.
Of the Jedi, and it's interesting. Like depending on who you talk to, um, the Legions of Letau may actually have been more like the Jedi because they formed out of people who were upset that the newly founded Jedi Order
Hmm.
was focusing exclusively on the light side, which
Oh, interesting.
is not what the Jedi Order on Tython believed in.
Hmm.
Um, the Jedi Code, I'm sure you can recite it. You're a very, very knowledgeable Star Wars podcaster, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I could definitely recite. No, I can't recite it. Making me look
Uh,
bad on my own show. This is crazy.
I gotta get back at you for all the cracks about being old, right?
Uh, Jedi. Oh, I need to look it up. Uh, whoa, it's long. Oh, wait. Oh, there is no emotion. There is peace. There is no ignorance. There is knowledge. There is no passion. There is serenity. There is no chaos. There is harmony. Is that right?
There is no death. There is the Force. Is the
Oh,
last line.
yeah, I think I guessed it. Oh,
Uh,
yeah, I see it in that now. Oh, that's weird. It doesn't have it out there.
yeah. So you know that's different than the um, Jedi one, because the Jedi one talks about both light and dark. Um,
Yes, yeah. And
not
maintaining
having,
balance too.
yeah, it talks about not having fear and having power instead. Um, so
Mhm.
you know, depending on how you view the legions of Leto, they may actually have been good guys in the sense that they were trying to be more balanced, like the Jedi.
Mhm.
Um, but then again, we don't really have a single source for what was going on with the legions of Leto.
Yeah.
Um, we just have a bunch of references to them and some brief mentions of their leaders and their war against the Jedi.
Mhm.
Um, but so that takes place 1,000 years after Tython is abandoned during the War of Light and Dark. Um, and then the next big, so that's 24,500 BBY. The next
Mhm.
big thing is the 100-Year Darkness, or the Second Great Schism, which was a war between Dark Jedi and uh, the main Jedi Order. There's a
Yeah.
huge gap of almost 17,000 years where
Mhm.
all we know about the Jedi is they started to spread out into the galaxy, um, trying to protect the weak and the innocent, and do Jedi things. But we have almost no information, and
Interesting.
we actually don't really have any information on how the Jedi got to Ossus or why they went to Ossus, because Ossus is way out in what would become the Outer Rim territories, way out on
Mhm.
the edge of the galaxy, whereas Tython was way in, right in the deep galactic core. It's like they went from the center of the
Oh, wow.
galaxy on Tython all the way out to the edge of the galaxy on Ossus.
Mhm.
How did that
Interesting.
happen? Why did that happen?
Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of where, like, so that's where we kind of see the split. Obviously, the Jedi are gone, and now we have these two factions. And that's really going to be like the main focus of this series on the balance of the Force. Really, pretty much after this episode, it's going to be more on the conflict of the Force because it's going to be about Sith and Jedi wars. So, unless you've got anything else to talk about for this first episode, I think that's around everything, just kind of setting the stage. But yeah, any
Yeah,
last
and
thoughts?
just yeah, my last thought is it's very interesting at this point. Um, After the legions of Leto are defeated, we don't really have a dark side faction
Mm,
for 17,000 years,
yeah,
which is
interesting.
absolutely
Yeah,
mind-boggling.
the Jedi existed before the Sith did.
No, no, the Sith species
Yes. Well, yeah. Before
Is
the Sith
100,000
ideology.
years old.
Yeah.
Um, but we'll get into that more because the second Great Schism and the 100-Year Darkness leads directly into the creation of the Sith, whose legacy we know about,
Mhm.
and the Great Hyperspace War.
Yeah. Good times. Back when there was balance, you know? Yeah. Anyways, thanks so much, y'all, for listening to the first episode of this series. Really hope this episode or this series kind of shoots off. Definitely one of our bigger stuff going out, and probably gonna release all these episodes together. We'll see. So definitely tell me your thoughts. And yeah, thanks so much, Josh, for coming on for this first episode. Looking forward to the next few. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
fun to talk about, and there's a lot there. We could have gone a lot deeper into like the legions of
Mhm.
Leto. Probably could have squeezed 20 minutes out of that. So it's just kind
Yeah.
of gotta pick and choose what we hit on, and I highly recommend people go get on Wikipedia and Google some of these events and factions and stuff, and where possible,
Yeah.
find the books that actually talk about them and read about it for
Mhm.
yourself. Because yeah, there's
Yeah.
36,000 years of Star Wars lore, and it's way better than
Mhm.
Disney.
That's for sure. Yeah, and join our Discord if you guys want to talk about this stuff and influence some of our topics. That'd be great. Yeah, anyways, hope you all have a great day. May the force be with you, and remember, good soldiers follow orders.